Hello, fellow Bitcoiners. It's Bitcoin Gandalf. I've been having extremely insightful conversations with other Bitcoiners as I seek out those with more knowledge than I, and I've decided to start recording and sharing some of these conversations in the hopes that there are others out there who might also benefit. Today's conversation is with Bitcoin Twitter user at Satrinity402. He is a Bitcoiner with a particular interest in free open source software and privacy. It just so happens that I'm reaching the part of my rabbit hole journey where I want to learn more about those topics, so that's what we'll be talking about in this episode. The topics covered include general Bitcoin privacy, CoinJoin implementations, KYC versus non-KYC Bitcoin, UTXO management, node implementations, wallets, multi-sig, and a few other topics. Please check out the show notes to find links to everything that we mentioned in this chat at thisisbitcoin.com/Satrinity402. And I'm very grateful to Satrinity402 for being so generous with his knowledge and time. Until next time, please enjoy. I thought we could maybe just start off with you introducing yourself.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I go by Satrinity402 on Twitter. I live here in the US. I first heard about Bitcoin. It's probably back in like 2015 or so, and someone that I worked with convinced me to sign up, get a Coinbase account, and buy a little bit. It was like, I don't know, like $100 worth, and I can't remember what it was at the time. And kind of bought it and completely forgot about it until the run in the bull market in 2017. Scrambled to find my my login information, and it was still there, thankfully. And but I ended up selling. Actually, went down the shitcoin rabbit hole a little bit. So thankfully, didn't get wrecked too hard. But I basically ended up selling everything that I had, Bitcoin, I was like Litecoin, Ethereum, in pretty much right at the top of the 2017 bull run, and didn't even look at Bitcoin for up until about March of 2020. And
sounds like perfect timing.
Yeah, well, at that time, I was just kind of looking because the market crashed, and I was kind of looking to buy some stocks, and I bought like a little bit of Bitcoin. I really didn't buy that much at the time. I freaking wish I did, but yeah, that's kind of when I started paying attention a little bit more. I had no background or no understanding of Austrian economics or anything like that. Wasn't even really all that into gold, silver, anything like that. And so I think actually really like when I really started to pay a lot more attention was my uncle, who's kind of a value investor guy, sent me Preston's first podcast episode around Bitcoin, and it was with Robert Breedlove, and that just like blew me away. I was not kind of came out of absolutely nowhere, and I've been essentially going down the rabbit hole ever since then.
Awesome. That's actually one of my favorite podcasts to send to people when I want to sort of try to orange pill them, or if I see like a hint of interest, I always send them to that podcast episode as one of the sort of resources, because he just nails like what is money and just like what makes Bitcoin special really well.
Yeah, and honestly, kind of addresses just some of those common misconceptions, right? Like, what happens when someone tries to take down Bitcoin? Like, what would that actually entail? Because
right, he's nailing like all the
knowing it at the time,
all the mainstream FUD, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just being able to counteract that, I'm like, okay, this may actually be pretty robust. It's kind of interesting, and I've always been somewhat technically inclined. So, looking into the tech a little bit and kind of how like resistant it was to change and to like things like a state attack, that sort of piqued my interest. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you able to share like what kind of, do you have a tech background, or is it just like more of a hobby thing?
I mean, been like tech support for my family since I was a kid. Um, but as far as career wise, I'm in just like the IT consulting space. Um, it's about all that I'll share.
Cool. No
But
problem.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
so definitely I do work with tech on a on a routine basis. Although it's not actually really any of the, it's kind of more corporate stuff. Not really touching any like FOSS applications and things like that. That was I kind of got my eyes open to the world of free and open source software, getting into the Bitcoin space. So that's pretty
Nice.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm in a similar, but probably not as technically proficient as you are, but similar boat, like getting into the free, like, yeah, Bitcoin's opened up a whole other worlds, including the free open source software. But yeah, no, the reason I asked is because like at least the impression that I have from seeing your tweets and stuff is that you're always getting you're always in there replying and getting involved on when there's conversations about nodes or FOSS or Bitcoin privacy. I see you interacting a lot with Bitcoin Q&A. I mean, I wondered whether you
Yep.
guys like were even collaborating on Bitcoiner Guide sometimes, just because I felt like, I just associated you with it so much because you're always present in those conversations too.
I am a like Matt Odell. I am quite the Bitcoin Q&A shill in terms of his guides. I just think that they were very helpful for me getting started and learning a lot about privacy, a lot about just the different options you have in terms of node hardware and wallet software, things like that. So, I mean, I shill a lot of a lot of his guides and a lot of the other guides from some of the other folks in the space that like bitcoin-intro.com, which is one made by 6102 Bitcoin, which I think he's taking a break from Twitter right now. Um, but yeah, I really like helping people out because there's definitely a need for it in the space. I mean, number go up is fun and all, but I think privacy and like when I learned that you can make and you can make decisions with your spending habits that can never be erased because of just how the blockchain is forever, kind of started making me realize that people need to at least understand, if you understand all of the potential privacy issues that may come about you just kind of using, not using your own node or using Bitcoin wallets that don't have good privacy features in them, like coin control and things like that. I just want to make sure people at least know about them, and then if they choose not to go down the route of caring, then you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, well,
So
at least they can make an informed decision. They can say, I'm aware that all these things exist, but I choose not to try and use them. I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to take the sort of the easy route or the convenient route and sacrifice a whole bunch of stuff that you could potentially do with Bitcoin, like just using it privately, using your own node, holding your own keys, all that sort of stuff.
yeah, like one of my favorite things that actually the Bitcoin Q&A has done is every time there's like a some sort of a data leak from, it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin related, just um, these large companies that retain KYC data, payment data, or just like names, addresses, things like that, and there are data leaks all the time, right? And so it's going to become more important for folks, especially those who have a good amount of Bitcoin, to follow privacy best practices and try to mitigate. You're essentially, if you're interacting with the online world at all, you're going to end up leaking. Your data is going to inevitably be leaked, but you can still take steps today to to minimize that, because if your address information gets leaked from like a KYC exchange, for example, and they know that you've bought, you got in pretty early, you have whatever 10 Bitcoin or something like that. You could potentially be a target for attack, especially if your personal address is listed on the exchange because of KYC regulation. And so, staying away from KYC is something that people really need to do. I mean, I've bought, I would say, the majority of coins that I have off KYC, because that was before I really knew about it. I was sort of going hard once I kind of realized the value proposition to Bitcoin, but I hadn't learned a lot about Bitcoin privacy. Learning about things like BISC and stuff, I think, are really important. I'll kind of stop there and see where you want to go. I'm rambling on a bit.
No, like what you're saying is super important. I don't think people realize like how potentially disruptive and dangerous it is that if your data is leaked from a KYC exchange and it includes the fact that maybe your address such that people and maybe you've reused the same address and you've got a lot of your Bitcoin deposited under one address, people can know how much Bitcoin you have, and then they also know your home address. I mean, yeah, makes you a potential target for, I'd be very scared if that happened to me. And then, if you own your own home, you can't exactly like just pick up and move kind of thing. If you rent, then it might
Absolutely.
be easier, but it's still a huge pain in the ass. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, and I mean that's what's really cool about some of these tools, like because that's kind of talking about the sort of $5 wrench attack, right? Where someone can, if they know where you live, and they know that you have, a lot of money, a lot of Bitcoin, then they can use physical violence to potentially gain access to that. But there are cool projects in the space like Sparrow, for example, which allows you to set up, and there are other software wallets like this, but that allow you to set up multi-sig. And like one of the main reasons why Sparrow's created by Craig, he said, I can't remember which, I've listened to a few of his podcasts, or a few podcast episodes that he's been on, but one of the main reasons why he wanted to create Sparrow and support, multi-sig and make it easy for folks is because, so he lives in South Africa. And if you depending on where you live in South Africa, you kind of just expect at some point to be broken into, to have your home broken into. Even if it isn't, even though it doesn't necessarily happen to everyone, it happens to a lot of folks down there. And so setting up a multi-sig wallet where you have your private keys distributed geographically is one way to even be able to counteract that $5 wrench attack that could be possible with a KYC leak, or just by you sort of doxing yourself or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't physically get to a key, then there's not much the attacker can do. Once they can't actually get what their goal is, which is your Bitcoin, there's no incentive to attack you anymore. I think a lot of people don't realize that either, is that like you can remove the incentive of the attacker, which is to steal your Bitcoin, if you just make it impossible for you to actually get a hold of it in the moment.
And you may think, the attacker's not going to believe me or something like that. But I think there's this, I think if we make, for example, multi-sig easy enough to where because right now you can argue that, maybe it's not quite easy enough for sort of mainstream users to set it up and use it and ensure that they have all the information they need, their backups and stuff like that secured. But if you get to the point where, it's almost assumed that everyone's savings is in some sort of a multi-sig setup, then, if you just tell them, like, it's going to essentially an attacker could essentially assume that you're using multi-sig and will likely believe you if it is sort of the norm, right? If everyone uses it. So I think even normalizing some of these better security practices, in writing code, I'm just starting to learn learn how to write some Java, because I kind of want to help out this too, but it'll probably be quite a while. But I think writing software, creating hardware wallets that help enable these hardened security measures uh, will be very beneficial, down the road because when number goes up and people start getting attacked for their Bitcoin. Um, we're going to want those things in place. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. As the exchange rate uh, goes up, there's going to be bigger incentives for attacks to happen because obviously the honeypot is bigger. And yeah, I completely get what you're saying about if we just sort of make um, like multi-sig or something like it the standard, such that it's assumed that most people who have Bitcoin are holding it like that, then the attackers are not going to be attempting to do what they might do if they think everyone's holding their own keys or something, because they know it's pointless. They're not gonna. It's like people don't really go and rob banks anymore because the security is so good. It's so hard to do that it's almost like you're gonna fail.
Disincentivizes it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, just so a little bit about my background, in case that helps you just like frame things in a way that I might understand, and hopefully like other people who are in a similar position to me. So I bought Bitcoin in 2019 the first time, but I sort of became aware of it in 2016, 2017. I work in like a client services business, and I had a client that and I spent a lot of time with clients. So I had a client who was telling me about
Okay.
Bitcoin and Ethereum in 2017, and I had all the usual, like, I looked into it and I was like, I had all the usual, like, oh, it's blockchain, not Bitcoin is the innovation, and it's a tulip mania, it's a bubble, it has no intrinsic value, like anyone could make another Bitcoin, and then why does this Bitcoin have value when somebody could just copy it? It's open source. But anyway, and then I was like, I felt sort of like vindicated when the bubble burst, and like, well, we went into the bear market in 2018. But I sort of made a note to watch the price, because I was like, if this sticks around and the price recovers, then there's obviously something here that I'm missing. And then I was on holiday in 2019, and I saw that Bitcoin was like back at 10K, and I was like, okay, interesting. It's like halfway to the all-time high, so there's something here. So I bought some, and then I was like, if I have some skin in the game, maybe I'll actually spend some time trying to learn more. And I ended up buying a business soon after that. So I spent the next year just working on the business and stuff. And I didn't really
Okay.
didn't have time to look into Bitcoin again until like November. And I had actually, so in March 2020, like I dove back into the stock market after like a decade of not investing. So in November, when I sort of finally took the time to understand Bitcoin, at least at like on a basic level, I sold everything, bought Bitcoin, like have a sort of background in finance and stuff, so I kind of got the economic and the financial aspect of it, and then just been going down the rabbit hole. And there's so many different areas. Like I work at Brains and Slush Pool at the moment, doing social media for them. So I've
Okay.
been diving down the marketing, sorry, the Bitcoin mining rabbit hole. I don't run my own node yet, but I'm going to. So that's something that I've been diving down using Bitcoin privately, like you. I've bought all of my Bitcoin via KYC exchanges. So like I'm considering like even selling it. Like I don't know, because it's a big move, but like I've even
Yeah,
considered
it's
like
tough.
selling it all and then buying it all on Bisq again, and just taking whatever the fee hit. Or but yeah, I don't understand the privacy aspect enough of it yet. So I'm wondering whether like I can just maybe coin join and then that's enough. Do I like whether that means that maybe I don't need to sell it? Like I don't understand the trade-offs yet. What's the benefit of selling it?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, that ultimately does come up. There is no like perfect answer there. People, I think, depending on their sort of threat models, or it very much varies on the person. But some things to kind of just to keep in mind when you're considering, do I, because the main two things you can do, number one is sell all of your KYC Bitcoin to, because if you buy it and you're just holding it, the KYC exchanges now have that information. They know that you bought. So even if you go, so like what coin joining does is provide forward-looking privacy. So if you were to move your coins around, they can essentially follow that, and they can see where, like, look at your spending habits, so on and so forth. Um, If you run them through CoinJoin, then they essentially just can't see all of your future spending from the point that you CoinJoin on. But everything behind that is it's still in the blockchain. They can still see that there is still a record of you buying that Bitcoin. So if you want to remove that, you would essentially need to sell your Bitcoin and then only acquire Bitcoin through no KYC means. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. So really, you're just getting rid of like someone knowing you bought Bitcoin. Because yeah, you presumably what you do is like you go back to a KYC exchange, you sell it, so there's a record of you buying and selling, and then whatever happens next. If you do it via no KYC, then there's no way of anyone knowing you bought some or you or whether you bought some or you didn't.
Right, exactly. And so like I'll just say personally what I did. Like I didn't want to sell any of my Bitcoin, and some of the reasons why. One, I didn't. BISC is a little bit tricky to do. At least in the US, it seems that it's tricky to do more larger transactions. That could just be something that I need to sort out. There might be a better way to do that, other than like meeting up in person. I've heard a lot of people that will do larger purchases just from meeting folks at Bitcoin meetups. I have yet to actually go to a Bitcoin meetup, so that was not really on the table for me, at least at this point in time. So essentially what I did was keep all of my KYC coins and starting to run them through CoinJoin so that I have future privacy. But one trade-off you should keep in mind is that it is possible for an exchange to not accept your, and this has really only happened, I think, at like one exchange, and I don't even remember who it was, where they were flagging users' accounts for running through CoinJoin to where they just couldn't sell the coins back to them. There are ways of even kind of getting around that through some features within Samurai Wallet, but we don't have to talk about that now. The point being is that, like, for me, I'm not anticipating ever having to sell my Bitcoin back ever and convert it to fiat. So I'm okay with just converting to or running through CoinJoin and then moving it into cold storage. So that's what I did with my KYC coins, and then just starting to learn how to earn Bitcoin is like one thing that I'm kind of working on right now and trying to figure out is how can I actually earn Bitcoin. That would be a good way of like through either could be from donations, from setting up like an online some sort of an online service type thing, doing consultations or whatever, and accepting sats. So acquiring no KYC Bitcoin through that sort of means, or just by buying on BISC.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, a lot of Bitcoin companies are now offering to pay people in Bitcoin as well. So if you can do contract work, like if you already have like a fiat mining gig that you don't want to give up, but lots of Bitcoin companies will do, you can do contract work, or like you said, just consulting. There's so many new people coming into the space that you could easily do some consulting. I think Armin the Parman does that. He's got a nice website and like offers like one-on-one consulting stuff, which is cool. Yeah. So before we dive, I want to dive a little bit more into the privacy aspect of stuff, but I was thinking we could go first into nodes, because from what it seems, if you're not running your own node, like that's the basic level of like, you know, using Bitcoin in a trustless way and in a private way, because you're not relying on anyone else's. You're not sending transactions to like via someone else's node, right?
Yeah. So there's really the two main things. The first one is holding your own keys, which some of us almost kind of take for granted because we're kind of already there. But the primary thing that folks need to do when just getting started in acquiring Bitcoin is holding their own keys. But that doesn't really add to the privacy aspect. And so the number one reason, this is my opinion, to run your own node is actually is for privacy. So when you connect to the Bitcoin network to send a transaction, you have to connect through a node, a Bitcoin node. And so if you aren't connecting through your own node, then you are connecting through another node. And in doing so, you are going to be leaking information. And so what information would you leak? Uh, that would be either like IP address type of information, which could lead to location. So there are some people that speculate that like maybe even it's possible that some of the big Electrum servers that are public could be run or owned by chain surveillance companies. So, and even if they aren't, you're still trusting them with that data. So you have IP address information and then your XPubs. So your XPub or your extended public key, that essentially links all of your sort of separate, like, how if you're in, I don't know, like what wallet software do you use to like generate addresses?
So I'm just on hardware. So I'll tell you my history of custodying Bitcoin. Because
Sure.
I've only just learned, I didn't know an XPub meant an extended public key, but I've almost just kind of learned the difference between like your private key and your public key and how
Hmm.
all those things happen. But I bought my Bitcoin on Binance, I think, the first Bitcoin. And then I kept it there for almost a year and a half, and then I got a Trezor. No, sorry, then I got a Ledger, and then that
Okay.
whole the whole leak of data from Ledger. I bought my Ledger after that, but I only found out about it after I bought it. So then I switched, and I also
Hmm.
found out that Ledger's closed source. So I moved off a Ledger to a Trezor because that's open source. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, and then now I run a multi-sig with I've used a cold card as well. So I've used Ledger,
And
Trezor, and cold card. But no, I've never run my own
okay.
node, and I've used I used to use Ledger Live and then Trezor Suite.
Okay. So like let's just say for example that you're using Trezor Suite and you want to send some Bitcoin to your multi-sig wallet and you go to generate a new address. So all of those addresses are essentially are all sort of tied together through um, your can be tied to your public key. So if you leak your public key information to, um, like let's just say you're using Ledger Live, and so that means that they essentially do have your extended public key. They don't have your private key, so they can't spend it. So it's not a security issue. It's merely just a privacy issue. They can see your entire balance, even if you go to generate. You have 100 different receive addresses that you've generated. They all roll up under sort of a single public key and private key.
Right, because
So that's
sorry to interrupt you, but is that because those addresses are all generated? Are they like a hash of the XPub or something like that, or there's like some formula from the public key which generates the addresses, and there's like a way to backwards figure out, if you know the public key, you can figure out all the possible addresses.
essentially
Yeah.
yes. That is so like when we get into kind of like how to connect something like Sparrow Wallet to like your hardware wallets. Um, you give Sparrow your public key, and then that's how it can then generate all of the different receive addresses. That's how it can see all the transactions you've ever received on any of those addresses, but all sort of in one wallet.
Hmm.
And so that's all done through, and I can't, I don't, I'm kind of reaching the limits of my technical understanding, but
No problems.
um, if you look up if you ever heard of like the HD wallets or the hierarchical deterministic wallets, that's basically where you have your your seed, which is then you can from that you can derive your private key and your public key, but then that there's a certain BIP standard there for those hierarchical or hierarchy deterministic wallets or whatever, where um, you can essentially generate, it's not infinite, it seems like it's infinite. It's like 2 billion different receive addresses tied to a seed or something like that.
Got it.
So, for any normal person, that's going to be plenty. So,
It's infinity in
but if you look
practice.
up if you look up like the standard for HD wallets, that will kind of go more into the weeds on how all that works.
Right.
But essentially, just know that anytime you're using like wallet software, you have to give them your public key, and so that's why when you go into like you can just continually generate new addresses, but it's still all tied to your seed. It's all kind of done through that XPub. So if you give up that XPub, you're going to give up the balance to all of those addresses that you've generated.
Okay, so am I right in thinking that if I run my own node and I sort of like host my own version of Sparrow, then I'm not, when I put the my XPub into the Sparrow on my node, then I'm not sending it to like Sparrow's node or some other third-party node. Is that right?
Yeah, so getting back to the main reason why running your own node is good for privacy is because um, in your wallet software, you have to provide an XPub. But if it's connected to your own node, then you're querying your balances through your own node. So you have a copy of the blockchain. And so if you're running a full node, you have a full history of all transactions that have ever occurred on the Bitcoin network. And when you provided an XPub, it can then look up all of those addresses and all the transactions that have occurred within those addresses, look up all the UTXOs that are in them. You're fetching all of that data from your own node, so you don't have to give up any of that information to a third party. So that's the reason why running your own node is good for privacy. Is you don't give up your IP address, you don't give up your balances. And yeah, regarding so like if you're using something like Sparrow, it's kind of like my new favorite desktop wallet at the moment. Sparrow doesn't have any of their own servers. Craig's taken an interesting approach where you can either connect to your own Electrum server, which is kind of the recommended approach. So all the node in a box sort of implementations have a version of Electrum server called Electrum Rusts or Electris. It's like Umbrel, MyNode, Run and Dojo, all of those run this Electris. It's basically a private Electrum server. And so that's a connection option that you have in Sparrow. You also have Bitcoin Core. And then if you don't have your own node, then Craig's kind of handpicked some like well-known, reputable public Electrum servers that you can use. I think like one is like run by Luke Childs, and like I can't remember some of the other ones that are in that list. But Sparrow doesn't run their own node
Got it.
for you to connect to. So
Is that just part of them trying to be like they're not even giving you the option to not be private or to give them data? Is that why they don't do it?
yeah, I mean, I think it's just in general, I think actually when Sparrow first came out, you could only connect it to your own node. But then I think I don't know how Craig sort of came to the conclusion that for folks that want to use multi-sig or whatever, it's still better to get off the ground and start using software where you can easily switch over to your own node when you want to, and you can at least trust. You're still putting trust in that node that you may be connecting to, one of those public ones. But at least it's not just like a generic one run by a company like Ledger or Trezor or even Sparrow himself. It's like one that's actually reputable within the Bitcoin community. But still, you're still going to be leaking that same information to them. So you're still having to trust them with that. So that's why it's still best practice to run your own node.
Got it. Awesome. And then just a question on Electrum. So Electrum is just like a different client, an alternative to running Bitcoin Core as a client?
Yeah, so my understanding is that Electrum connects to Bitcoin Core, but it kind of extends its functionality and allows you to do things, especially now in like the latest version of the Electrum server, allows you to do sort of batching. So it basically allows you to query the data more efficiently. And it also, I'm trying to remember how it's a little bit more private. So I think all the address, I'm trying to remember there's some specific component to Bitcoin Core which leaves, I can't remember if it's addresses or it's some piece of information that it actually leaves unencrypted, just kind of in like a plain text file on the machine that you're on. So it's not a security issue at all. It's more of just a privacy issue. If anyone got access to the device, they would be able to essentially try and find that text file if you're running just Bitcoin Core only. And they would be able to see either address or XPub information. But the way that Electrum server handles that, it encrypts it all and can essentially query that a little bit more and make it a little bit more private, so that if someone did get access to the device, they still wouldn't be able to see sort of like what's being queried, that kind of a thing. I really wish I could remember the more technical details on that. But
no, don't worry. But that makes sense. Like, there's I guess an aspect of Bitcoin Core that if somebody was able to physically access your device, there's something that they could read that isn't encrypted, whereas with Electrum it is. And then is Spectre like Electrum and Bitcoin Core, or is Spectre a wallet?
So Spectre is like Sparrow in that it's a software wallet that allows you to set up things like multi-sig. And they also make it like really easy to back up all the information that you need to restore like a multi-sig wallet.
Mm-hmm.
I think Spectre just connects to Bitcoin Core directly. I don't think it has the ability to connect via Electrum. And they're just different implementations of wallet software.
Got it.
So like that one's written primarily in like JavaScript. Sparrow's written in Java. So I've heard arguments that, JavaScript's not quite as secure. It's a little bit more of an attack vector. But still, I mean, I'm not trying to say that Spectre is insecure or anything like that. They're just different wallet softwares, different pieces of wallet software that have their own kind of different trade-offs and different feature sets. The unique thing that Sparrow just added that kind of puts it in a league of its own is the ability to do equal output coin joins through Samurai's Whirlpool implementation. So that's up until this point, the only way you could actually run through, and if you want to later, we can talk a little bit more about the different coin join implementations, but you could only run through, do an equal output coin join through Whirlpool if you had an Android device. But now, if you have a desktop at all, which runs either Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can now run coin join through Sparrow.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think this would be a good place to go back to sort of discussing the different node softwares, and then we can come back, because I from the research I'd done, I think I was going to run Sparrow connecting to Electrum as like my wallet and server choice. But yeah, I think let's go back to talking about the different node implementations, and then we can discuss like what kind of like basically softwares I would download onto my node. Depending on what I wanted. So I know there's a few node implementations, and I did a lot of research. I listened to the Citadel dispatch with all the node, where like all the different node implementations were there except for Umbrel. I know that like Umbrel's a slightly controversial. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you could call that, in the sense that like it's really apparently has very good UI UX, like really easy to use, but there's the whole thing about their license previously not being like open source, and now it's not even, it's still not a GNU v3 or v4 or whatever license, right?
Yeah.
And then apparently I've also read and been told that there's like potential issues with they don't, if you really want to like be at the top of your game privacy wise, Umbrel is not great either for that.
Yeah, so I think it's just because it doesn't allow they don't allow I think if you actually go onto their GitHub site, I'm not sure if it's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like you could only access their through like their sort of browser UI through just like standard HTTP. You couldn't do it through HTTPS. And I think there were a couple other things too.
Okay.
I'm not super privy to it. That wasn't like a major concern for me. So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about my sort of node journey. So I started out the first node that I ever had was an Umbrel, and um, and I got it because I wanted to just have, I saw that there are these nodes that are kind of great at certain things, but then had certain shortcomings. And I saw Umbrel as the one that kind of could just do it all. You could do Lightning, you could run a Samurai server and do coin join, um, and so that's what I started with. But I started running into reliability issues. Um, Once I was running, I had a few different apps, and I think this is just kind of one of the things that is not really talked about a lot, which is just these Raspberry Pis aren't really that powerful, and I don't know if it's the right approach to try and run apps, like run a ton of apps on a single one of these Raspberry Pis, which is kind of the approach that Umbrel's taking.
Mm-hmm.
And that just opens up all sorts of different attack vectors from like a security or privacy um, point of view, right? So let's just say you're running Lightning, so you have a hot wallet on your node there, and then you have like 10 other of these different apps that you can install through Umbrel's App Store. Whether or not those are completely fine and secure, you've probably not vetted all those, and that just does increase the attack surface in which there could be potentially malicious code that gets in there and can access your node, can potentially access your wallet, that kind of thing. Um, so, anyways, I was running into issues from a just like my node was actually going down. Like I went on vacation for like 3 days, and like the node couldn't stay up for that time. So like I couldn't use my node when I was away. And that kind of frustrated me a little bit. Um, so so basically at that point, I knew that I wanted to still run. I was starting to learn a little bit more about CoinJoin, and I was starting to actually use it. And this is kind of right when it could have even potentially been why I was running into some issues, is because I was running Whirlpool sort of 24/7 doing remixes on the Numbrel, or the Umbrel node, while also running Lightning, running Sphinx chat, all that stuff. And so I ended up switching that over uh, to a Ronin Dojo. And but I was also then starting to have some problems because of SSD the SSD enclosure does not adequately power it. So there's still like, and I think that could have even potentially been the reason why I was also having issues on the Umbrel. It was really more of like a hardware issue, not even really a software issue. Um,
Yeah, I think was it you that
so anyways,
was it you that had told me that to get exactly what, like specifically what the Running Dojo website recommends in terms of hardware, because I had bought my I had bought my Node hardware for based on what Umbrel recommends, and then I decided to not use an Umbrel and to go for a Running Dojo and a Raspberry Pi. So I've actually I'm using the Umbrel hardware, some of it for my Raspberry Blitz, not Raspberry Pi. And then I've got like completely new separate one based on what Running Dojo recommends. And I think maybe you mentioned something about the enclosure to me as well.
yeah. So let's go back and just let's talk about the different node implementations. Because I think, honestly, I think the majority of the ones that are out there and well known, they all work fine. They also, one thing I definitely recommend checking out, especially if you haven't yet ordered your node hardware, because there's like slightly different hardware that is just recommended for each one of the node implementations, partially because when you're writing the software, you need to have hardware to test against. And so you can eventually test and test and test on certain hardware, and you can find what's reliable for that node implementation. But each one of the node implementations, so my node, Raspberry Blitz, Ronin Dojo, Umbrel, they all have active Telegram groups. So I definitely recommend going into those groups and kind of just asking some questions around, if people had issues with other nodes and they switched to that one, or are there any pros and cons that they should sort of know about? Kind of people say it a lot in this space, but you definitely do want to do your own research, because I think everyone has different sort of use cases. So like I'm talking about the approach nodes that kind of do it all in one sort of box. So you have Umbrel, you have MyNode, Start9. Start9 does that as well. And they even are extending, I guess, kind of like Umbrel, to where they're going outside of the Bitcoin app space, for you to be able to kind of host, I don't know if it's like kind of like file, like Nextcloud sort of file.
Yeah, like be your own private,
be your own
be your own
cloud.
server. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But just see if like if you're like wanting to do that, ask questions, see how reliable it is, because especially things are going to be marketed for the absolute best case scenario, but in reality, sometimes they don't perform as well as you would expect, especially if you're running multiple like different pieces of software that are relatively intense. So like my primary two use cases were, I wanted to run Lightning, and I wanted to have something dedicated for Samurai Wallet, so that I could do coin join and have kind of like most secure, most private node that fully backs that, in my opinion, the most feature rich on-chain wallet that there is, which is Samurai Wallet. So I ended up with two nodes. I run a Raspberry Blitz that does that. That is my Lightning node, and then it also is running my my private Electrum server. So like when I connect up Sparrow Wallet, I can, even though Ronin Dojo does have the option to run Electrum, which we'll talk about in a second, but I just connect that to my Raspberry Blitz. So I use that for Lightning and for basically like my my hardware wallet, and then I have Ronin Dojo that's sort of dedicated to doing coin join and backing my Samurai Wallet. When you go to configure, this is kind of just a unique thing about Samurai Wallet. So the like, I don't know if it's the Ronin Dojo team or the Dojo team, because they are different. Ronin Dojo is sort of a wrapper around Dojo, which is the true backing server for Samurai. One of those two groups, they set it up in such a way that there's essentially two different kinds of indexing. For those that aren't familiar, indexing is just basically a way to set up a database so that you can query it faster. So if you're using Samurai Wallet exclusively, then they recommend you use the default Samurai Wallet indexer when you're going to set up. And these are things that you can change in the settings later on. So it's not like an all or nothing thing that you can never change. But that's going to make it to where Samurai Wallet performs the absolute best. It's optimized to query data from Samurai Wallet. But they also have an option for you to just turn on the Electrum server, which also is basically an indexer. When you do that, it may make your Samurai Wallet load a little bit slower, but then you can also connect things like Sparrow to it, or Blue Wallet, or any of these other implementations that allow you to connect via Electrum. So that's what I did, but there are people that have different use cases and maybe want to run a bunch of additional apps. And so, you may look at Umbrel and see that that fits your use case really well. Or look at Noddle. Noddle gives you kind of a built-in Dojo, but also allows you to run some other apps as well. That's also an option.
Can you run Sphinx chat on Raspberry Blitz?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't actually have that. I don't actually have that set up yet, but I do know that it is an option in there. So yeah, I would say Sync Chat works on most of the Node implementations now. I don't think it runs on. It definitely doesn't run on Ronin Dojo because it doesn't really work out of the box with Lightning. I actually did see a guide that was shared. If I can find it later, I'll send it to you. But someone did write a guide on how to run Lightning on a Ronin Dojo, but it's just not set up out of the box. You got to do a lot of command line stuff.
Got it.
Yeah, but it is possible because at the end of the day, it's a Raspberry Pi, right? So you can just manually install LND, and it's got Bitcoin Core on it. So if you configure it right, you can still run Lightning on a Ronin Dojo if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very much going to be in the doing similar thing to you, which is I want to run a Raspberry Blitz mainly for Lightning, and then a Ronin Dojo for more just to use for privacy. So if you don't mind me asking, are you running Sparrow on your Raspberry Blitz with through Electrum or connected to Electrum, or are you just not running Sparrow at all?
So Sparrow doesn't need an app on the node itself.
Okay.
It just connects to any node instance that runs Electrum, which is virtually all of them run Electrum by default. Samurai or Ronin Dojo is the only one you need to actually configure that, and that's because they do have that custom indexer for Samurai.
Okay.
That it's just the way that it's implemented. It's one or the other. So unless you're running Ronin Dojo, basically all of the node packages will be running Electrum by default, and they all connect. They all connect over Tor as well.
Okay.
Which is the really nice thing about that is if your home IP address changes, your Tor connection URL, the onion address, does not change. So not only is it a secure and anonymous way to sort of to reach out and connect to it, but it also kind of solves that problem of if you have dynamic IP at your home, your IP address could change like every month, and you'd have to go in and update that. And you don't want to do, like, if you're traveling and you need to use your Bitcoin wallet on the go, you don't want IP address changes to happen. So,
yep.
But all of those support connecting to Electrum over Tor. That's what Sparrow does, has Tor built in. So
okay, and then Sparrow. So Sparrow is just actually like a software wallet I download on a PC.
Yeah, and it's more like it's more wallet soft. I don't even know what the technical term is, because software wallet would actually be like a hot wallet, right? So within Sparrow, you can literally choose an option that says create new software wallet or import one, but it's basically a hot wallet where the private keys are actually on the device.
Mm-hmm.
You actually need to have a software wallet or a hot wallet in order to run Whirlpool on Sparrow. And the reason why is because as you are running the Whirlpool client on your device, it needs to be able to, like, when it's your turn to have a UTXO included in like a remix or in a mix, the device needs to be online, and it needs to be able to automatically sign the transaction. So that is why you will always have to run, unless something new. I don't know. I don't see how this will ever change. If you're running any sort of a Whirlpool client, whether it be from Samurai Wallet or from Sparrow, something you're going to have to essentially have the keys online so that those transactions can be continually signed.
Okay,
yeah.
So would you ever mix like your entire stack in one go? if it means that you have to leave your keys on a hot wallet?
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't do it all in one go, but it wouldn't be for that specific reason. So let's just say that you have. So let me ask you this: if you, I know you said you've bought from a few kind of different exchanges.
Yeah.
Have you used coin control, or are you familiar with what coin control is?
No, I've never used coin control. I don't even really know what it is.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So when you receive Bitcoin, you receive a UTXO, and that UTXO is kind of like a bill. And when you use wallet software that gives you coin control, what that means is it gives you the ability to label your UTXOs or label your bills. Why is this important? If you don't label your if you don't label your UTXOs, then when you go to spend them, and spending is not necessarily like on a good or a service, like you could literally just be moving it to a different wallet of yours, but that's still a spend on the Bitcoin network. If you go to spend and you mix those UTXOs into a single transaction, then chain analysis companies can look like, let's just say, for example, Coinbase is, you bought from Coinbase and you bought from Binance and you acquired some no KYC Bitcoin. If you had all of those in, let's just say, three separate addresses that you received at three separate times, but you wanted to move all of them into a different wallet all at once. If you combine all of those UTXOs into a single transaction, then a chain analysis company could say, okay, I know that this one UTXO belonged to Gandalf, but I can also see that this that UTXOB and UTXOC, which I don't know where they came from, but I can see that they were included in this transaction. They all group up and they come out to a single UTXO and a single address. They can essentially imply that, that you just merged some coins into a new address. So even though they only knew about the coins that you bought from Coinbase, now they also know that you have these other coins, and they kind of can figure out how much. This is why like using CoinJoin and stuff is so important, because once you've broken that link, they can't do this type of analysis on you, um, or you certainly make it like a hell of a lot harder. Because most people don't use coin control, and a lot of wallet software doesn't even give you the option of labeling your UTXOs. So
Would it
it's
be
like
like would it be
after
like Ledger Live or Trezor Suite that would give me the that like would be the type, if would
I
those
actually
be
do believe that both of those give you coin control.
okay.
It may be like an advanced setting or something like that. Like one thing that's kind of frustrating is that like Bitcoin is not inherently private, especially if you're just going to like allow users to merge UTXOs without even thinking about it. And once you do that, you can't undo that, right? Like it's forever on the blockchain. Like those coins have been merged into a single transaction forever. Or I mean, in terms of on the blockchain, they can like
That record is forever,
Coinbase
yeah.
will always, yeah, that record is forever,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. And you can't undo that. So this is kind of why I've taken an interest in helping people understand like why privacy in Bitcoin is important, because it's not like, I think we will get to a point, I'm optimistic that we'll get to a point where wallet software will be inherently private and kind of like have privacy by default. But the reality is that that's not where we are at the moment. Um, and so people just need to understand, if they're moving coins around and stuff, like what's actually happening. Um, Samurai Wallet actually posted a 4-part series on how to literally run chain analysis on yourself.
Oh
So you
wow.
can actually learn how to, there's a really cool, it's like a block explorer, except that it has additional kind of graphical functionality that allows you to sort of track and trace. It basically is the type of software that chain analysis companies can use to like track and follow where coins go. And literally, like it was partially written by a nim on Twitter that goes by Ergo, and he actually works or did work for a chain analysis company, and kind of goes through, like how these companies are actually, like, what are they actually able to get just by looking at the blockchain. And I highly recommend you go checking out. It's a pretty in-depth article, but they start you at the basics of, you don't really understand UTXOs, all the way through to you can run chain analysis on yourself.
Okay.
And also talks about what happens when you coin join, why does coin join provide the privacy that it does, like what is actually happening on chain. So it's a 4-part series, just like a written article series.
And you said that's by Samurai did that?
Yeah, Samurai Wallet posted all 4 of them from their account. Should probably make a note of all these things so that I can provide
Yeah.
some links to them after the fact.
I'm making notes, so anything that I can't find, maybe I'll just message you and see if you can point me in the right direction.
Okay, sure, yeah. So anyways, I think, like, holding your own in terms of, starting to use Bitcoin privately, things that people can start taking action on today is run your own node. Obviously hold your own keys, but that's not really a privacy thing. But well, I guess it is if you're leaving your keys on exchange. That's really, really bad for privacy. But hold your own keys, run your own node, and then start to learn privacy best practices. So, that includes coin control, or labeling your UTXOs is another name for it. So every time, like, for example, every time I receive, and there is wallet software that helps you with this. Like, when you go to generate a new address within Sparrow, it'll actually request that you put in a label, and it will, when a UTXO comes into that address, it will label it with that certain source. So maybe you bought from Coinbase or something like that. You label it as Coinbase, and if maybe you then later on receive a 50,000 sats from a bet from your friend, you receive that in, you label it as, put your friend's name or put no KYC or something like that, so that you never want to merge those two transactions together. And a lot of wallet software now allows you to pick, like, if you're going to be spending, you can actually pick which UTXOs get merged. So maybe you want to only pick, it's like you were asking earlier about, would you just mix all of your coins all at once within a software wallet? I think from a security concern, that would be fine, especially if it was like a relatively fresh one, or you have a device that you don't think has been compromised. You can, I think wallet software is at a point right now where that is completely fine. But if you go to sort of mix all of them into a single whirlpool mix, you're going to be combining all of those UTXOs. So even though you're going to be getting forward privacy from then on, you're going to essentially be telling Coinbase all of the other Bitcoin that you also had and acquired from various other places. So that's why coin control is important. If you had a series of UTXOs from Coinbase and a series of UTXOs from Binance and a series of UTXOs from various no KYC venues, then you can run whirlpool mixes and only combine the UTXOs by source. So do a coin join mix of all of your your Coinbase ones. Do the same for Binance, so on and so forth. You don't have to, but that's going to give you better privacy, because you're not going to be leaking that information of other UTXOs that you own. You're not going to be leaking that information to any chain analysis companies that'll be working for these KYC exchanges, which they do.
Got it. So essentially, if I had bought from loads of different KYC exchanges and then sent them all to like my Trezor, I'm essentially, without labeling anything, I've essentially like combined all my UTXOs, so to speak.
Yeah, that's precisely right. If you had received into like 20 different addresses and then you just hit send all to a different to like a different address. You wanted to consolidate them or whatever into a new hardware wallet or something like that that you had set up. Then yeah, it's just, that is how that transaction would be constructed. As it would merge all of those UTXOs, consume them all, and then spit out a single UTXO with a larger amount of Bitcoin on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I ran a Trezor, the transfers I made into it were all to different addresses. So does that equate to separating UTXOs? Like I generated a new address for every transaction I sent in.
So essentially what that means is you didn't reuse addresses, which is good. Because like once you've deposited a UTXO from an exchange to an address, they've automatically flagged that receive address as, owned by Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anyone else sent money to that address, then that would be an additional UTXO or series of UTXOs that get added to that address. They know that is owned by you. So that's just like when we're looking at ways of increasing our privacy, you're just trying to basically make it as hard as possible for these chain analysis companies to be able to actually perform its analysis, right?
Yeah.
But
But what if I'm sending?
when you are depositing those UTXOs into a single address, you're giving them 100% certainty that yep, those are all for sure 100% owned by him. But in your case, it sounds like you've done a good job about not reusing addresses. So you have one UTXO per address. And so you can go back and you may have to scrape through some withdrawal history on the different exchanges. But you could piece that together and label all of those by the different sources. That's usually how you want to do it, is just label it by source. And so when you go to move funds out of that wallet, like let's just say you wanted to move it into a different address, it's fine to consolidate all of the Coinbase ones because they already know that you've withdrawn those addresses, withdrawn all of your Bitcoin from them to those 5 different addresses. So it's fine if you consolidate it. They already have that information. It's when you start to consolidate and add in additional UTXOs that they don't know about, you're just giving them information for free, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I know of multi-sig service offerings where you essentially can't generate a new address until you've sent UTXOs out of that address. So as long as, like, let's just say you make your multi-sig and you get one address and then you're just sending Bitcoin in, it'll always give you the same address to send to until you've done a UTXO or transaction out, and then the next one in they'll give you a new address for. Which sounds
what services? Yeah, what service? I'm not super privy to. I haven't actually got multi-sig set up. Part of the reason why is I just know and have heard that there are some sort of privacy implications, and these things will actually be solved with
Taproot, right?
with Taproot.
Yeah.
Not just by Taproot being activated, but once Taproot is activated, wallet software that support multi-sig like Sparrow, Spectre, they can then make some updates to leverage the new Taproot upgrade because basically because right now, like, it's very obvious on chain when you have a multi-sig.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It seems like right now, if you go on a chain, like on a block explorer, you can see it says like 2 or 3 multi-sig or whatever, or it's just a single sig. So it like differentiates between them. Whereas Taproot, you won't be able to tell the difference.
Right.
That's what I understand anyway.
And it's not when just Taproot is activated. That's just once Taproot is activated, then that gives developers the ability to. I think it's through like the new address type, which I don't even know what it's. I'm not even sure what it's going to look like. It's like a variation of a Batch32 address type. But anyways, the ones that are like pay to the script types, like pay to Taproot or whatever. That's the one where you're not going to be able to see if it's multi-sig, single sig, it all looks the exact same. So you're going to make it to where like Lightning channel opens and closes, which those are multi-sig 2 of 2s. Um, those will also just look like regular transactions
Yeah. So
once they start leveraging the Taproot functionality.
right. Yeah. So if somebody, for example, if there was a single like that, like a solution like the one I just described, where they are only giving you one address until you've sent some Bitcoin out, and you have never done that, and like for example, you've just like that's your cold storage multi-sig, so your entire balance is in there, and you've put it all in one address. That's like terrible privacy.
Yeah, and especially if you've put it there from an exchange, um, they will immediately tag that address as owned by you, and so anything else that goes in there is, yeah, address reuse is bad for privacy. Maybe if I mean, there might be use cases for doing so, like maybe you're a nonprofit and you want it to be very easy for people to track, donations or something like that.
Mm.
That could be a use case for address reuse. But generally speaking, especially from an individual user's perspective, you should never reuse address. That's why um, well, I think a cool functionality that's only right now supported in Samurai Wallet is a paynim. Are you familiar with what a paynim is?
No, but is that what you have on your bio?
Yeah, it's what I have in my bio, and it's actually so BIP47 outlines the ability to have reusable payment codes,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Samurai Wallet team just added something on top of that, which because the payment code is ugly. It literally starts with PMT, and then it's like a bunch of. It kind of looks like almost like uh,
It's like an
a
address.
public key or
Yeah.
something like that. It's kind of just a bunch of numbers and letters. Um, but so what they did is they took the payment codes. They made a few modifications to just kind of extended the BIP47 um, proposal, but they made it so that instead of you having this code that is really long, it's just a text string basically. Free. And what that allows you to do, though, if you were to leverage that, is someone can basically query and get a fresh, unused address that's tied to that person's Samurai wallet. And it's like if someone wanted to donate like every month to the Samurai Wallet team and they go to donate to Samurai Wallet, normally, if you don't want to reuse addresses, people would think, set up like a BTC Pay server or something like that to
Mm-hmm.
like fetch, new fresh addresses. But that requires like an online server all the time. The cool thing about the BIP47 payment codes or paynims, Samurai Wallet's implementation of them is that it allows you to post a static text string, essentially. Mine's like Spring Cherry 935 or something like that. All the paynim is like a human readable code that translates to the payment code. That's really all it is. And then it also, I'm not sure why they did it, but it also will, based on that paynim, will actually generate this little robot image. You've probably seen them a lot. That's what mine is. That's what like Bitcoin Q&As is.
Ah, okay, cool.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's actually like when you get your paynim, when you go to get a paynim generated, it will automatically create that, and it will be completely unique.
It's like a QR code image,
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
it's actually based on your payment code. So that's real. So all the paynim is it creates that little image, but it also makes it to where it's a lot easier for. It's kind of almost like a mapping service to where it's like, okay, Spring Cherry 935, look up to the mapping service, and that maps to payment code, blah, 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 blah. That's just like not easy for me to like, I can tell you Spring Cherry 935, but I'm not going to tell you PMT 7406QR, whatever, you know.
Got it. And then the payment
So
code
that's
is the payment code fetching a new address every time somebody wants to pay you using your paynim.
so yes, but there's a catch, and this is with the current version. They're actually working on like a new version that I think will help with this. But the very first time you go to basically establish a connection to donate to someone with a paynim, you have to pay a flat fee. the reason why you have to pay that flat fee is because it will actually generate it will it will create a Bitcoin transaction that will also output basically some text through an op return. So it's part of the Bitcoin transaction. So that's you're basically writing text to the Bitcoin blockchain that will forever be there, that will essentially allow you to be able to fetch new codes. And that part, I don't know exactly how that works. It's kind of like a black box to me. But essentially, once that piece of text is on the blockchain, that's all that you need to then be able to continually like fetch addresses, and you don't need to have like an online wallet of any kind. So it really becomes that step. So if in a perfect world you wouldn't have to do that, and so I'm not sure if that's something that will be fixed in the V3 version or if it will just be cheaper. But I think it's like 15,000 sats. So it's not like an insignificant amount to set up that initial connection. But once you've done that, then you can forever, with your paynim, donate to that other, and basically generate fresh codes to donate. So it allows you to post a static text string that isn't a static receive address.
Got it.
And it's a good way to accept donations privately or accept payments privately.
And do you have to do one of those for every single person that you want to ever pay if you want to do it more than once? Or I guess it does it even if you are going to pay someone once, you need to this happens, right? Per person.
It's a way to do it without having to collaborate with the other users.
Yeah.
So another feature that's in Samurai Wallet, let's just say that I wanted to donate to Samurai Wallet team, and I was DMing the Samurai Wallet account on Twitter. I could say, hey, can I? I'm going to send you some sats. Can we do a stowaway? So a stowaway is a pay join transaction that actually obfuscates the amount that's being donated as well. So it's actually even better for privacy. It's not just getting like a fresh address, but it's actually obfuscating how much is being sent on chain. And they have good documentation for how all this stuff kind of works. I think it's even on Bitcoin, Bitcoiner.guide, Bitcoin Q&A's site to talk about stowaway transactions. And that doesn't cost anything extra. You have to collaborate with them. So when you say, okay, I want to send it to the Samurai Wallet team, they have to go into their wallet, open it up. They have to be online. And then they can say, listen for cahoots. And basically that will, through a piece of technology called Soroban, it will, kind of sounds like straight out of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It connects over Tor without giving up any identifiable information at all. But it basically allows the devices to talk to each other and collaborate and construct the transaction, so that you can donate to them and obfuscate the amount on chain. It's a two-person coin join between each other, and that's how it obfuscates the amount. But that requires someone to be online and be available. That's why it's not like a scalable solution. But if you and your friend, like, it's just someone that you do know on Twitter, and you're like, I don't want to pay that fee or whatever to donate their paying him because it's gonna be a one-time thing or something. You can just say, hey, I want to pay you a stowaway payment, and you could do that.
Okay, understood. Cool. That's really cool. I had no. I'm like learning a shitload. I had no idea about any of this stuff, so that's amazing.
Yeah, there's that. It's they actually did a video series. I think Bitcoin Q&A and a guy goes by the name of Brother Rabbit, which I think they might both be from. I think they might both be from the UK. I know for sure Q&A is. I think Brother Rabbit might be also, but they did a video series on kind of an overview of all of the features of Samurai, and there are a surprising amount that, like, I kind of was even watching it and there were things that I learned that I didn't know about. It's a very, very feature rich wallet. It's just that some of the features have actually been there for a while, and it's just not talked about because it's been there for, 1 year, 2 years, something like that. And so it's not getting the headlines or whatever, blowing up on Twitter. But yeah, there isn't like CoinJoin is one great way of achieving privacy on chain, but there's another aspect that, like, it's not like you can just run through CoinJoin and then you're absolutely off the hook forever. It will definitely, if you run it through Whirlpool, it will create, it will sort of break that link. But if the other participants that were a part of those coin joins had really bad privacy afterwards, like they merged a lot of their different UTXOs. Eventually, over time, there's something called an anonymity set. So Samurai team's also written like a document or documentation around anonymity sets and what does that actually mean? How can you actually calculate your anonymity set? So basically being able to calculate like how much privacy do you gain? Because it's going back to the chain analysis conversation that we were having a little bit earlier. The main objective with using all of these different privacy tools is just to make it as hard as possible for them to, it's just a probability game. So you want to make it to where they only have like a 2% chance or a 1% chance of even being able to predict, whose coins are whose. When they can predict with, very high probability, that's where, so all that to be said, that while coin joining, running through Whirlpool and then maybe sending off to cold storage, that does give you good forward-looking privacy. You still want to add good spending habits after the fact. All that is going to do is further increase your privacy, further make it increasingly difficult to be able to be chain analyzed. So
is that where like labeling UTXOs and not mixing them and stuff comes in?
Yeah, and within this is like, so Sparrow's going to eventually have all this stuff, since most of the code is already kind of written by the Samurai Wallet team in Java, and that application is also in Java, so it ports over pretty easily. But there's this idea of once your coins are mixed, they go into this post-mixed wallet, and the post-mixed wallet will have features in it that give you additional privacy, like, for example, being able to actually collaborate to create a two-person coin join. You may have seen the phrase thrown around by some folks where they say, make every spend a coin join. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so what that means is that you can actually, you can create, like, if I was to spend out of my post-mix wallet, so I've already achieved really good forward-looking privacy, but I want to make it like continually do as much as I can to achieve privacy on chain. I can actually collaborate with another Samurai Wallet user. Hopefully soon, you could also collaborate with a Sparrow Wallet user to construct a two-person coin join spend. So on chain, instead of, let's just say, for example, you were going to spend out of one UTXO and you were just going to move coins from post-mix and Samurai to cold storage. Well, you could just send that entire UTXO, but chain analysis company is going to say, okay, I may not know who exactly that is, but I know that they moved everything to this one wallet from that entire UTXO. We just moved into a different wallet. We know they didn't buy anything with it because they literally moved the whole thing and there's no change. What you could do instead is you can actually construct a two-person coin join transaction where someone else is also fronting basically some of their Bitcoin. It does this. You can do this all collaborating through the Samurai Wallet app, and there's no security risks of any kind within this. But basically, they will use some of their coins, throw them into your transaction with some of your coins, and it basically will just make a transaction on chain that is far more difficult to even understand what's going on. And so it just, again, when talking about privacy on chain, it's not easy. You want to do everything that you can to achieve that. And so there are these tools where after you've even run through a series of basically Whirlpool, which is specifically it's a 5-person coin join. You can do individual one-off coin joins like a Stonewall 2x. That's that 2-person coin join. You can actually create a coin join with yourself to where on chain, if it's it will look like you are maybe collaborating with someone else, but it was actually just a different UTXO that you had.
Is
so
that like
there
if
are
you
a
had,
lot
if,
of
is that if you
tools
had like like you just do it between 2 of your wallets, both of which you've like gotten the UTXOs there in a private way, so they can't really tell they were both yours to begin with?
Yeah, so well, it's not even that you've acquired them in a private way, because once you've run them through CoinJoin, now that's broken all the links. So you can essentially assume that is like you can start to spend privately.
Yeah. Okay. So you've gotten it to
From
that
that,
place in a private way, regardless of whether it's like buying non KYC or you've like coin joined before. So it's like a post mix. You could have like a couple of post mix wallets, I guess, and then you could coin join between them.
you only need one. So
Oh, okay. So you send two
what
separate
maybe
UTXOs into a coin join from the same wallet.
Yeah, but they're from different addresses. So on chain, they can't you can't tell that 2 addresses belong, because unless you have the XPub, right, you can't actually link 2 addresses together. So
Oh,
on
got it.
chain, all it looks like is 2 addresses you're doing it from the same wallet, but you have 2 addresses that are completely different. They each have, a single UTXO in them that maybe haven't yet been spent out of Whirlpool. So they have like the full amounts. So it'd be like 100,000 sats or 1,000,000 sats or something like that. And so when you collaborate with it's called the Stonewall transaction, where it's like a 2-person coin join, except that you're just coin joining with yourself instead of another person. But on chain, you're coming straight out of the coin join. They have no idea if that's another person or
Yeah, they don't know who it is, right?
So all of these, yeah. So adding in all of these tools, it's kind of like, there's not one catch-all way of, like, for example, on like being private when it comes to digital privacy for a mobile device, right? It's a
not like do
series
one
of
thing and
things
then
that
you're
just
done.
continually, yeah. It's like I don't want to say it's kind of like a depressing way of saying that. It's like a never-ending battle, but it's just like I think of it more as like going to the gym. It's like it's a constant learning process of trying to do the best you can to improve. And every day, like, you're going to try and just be better than you were yesterday. And that's just like how a lot of these, how like privacy on chain too is, because there isn't like a single, you do this one thing and you have perfect privacy on chain. You want to just continually do everything you can to just make it more and more difficult, because it's just a probability game. You're never going to have 100% perfect privacy, but by doing these 2-person coin joins or coin joining to your coin joining, doing like they call it like a fake coin join. It is an actual coin join, but it's coin joining 2 different UTXOs that you have, and that type of stuff just makes it so much more difficult for on-chain analysis to be able to follow. And if the more and more people that do it, it's like here's the built-in incentive here. Like the more people that continually coin join, the more widely acceptable it will become, and the better privacy everyone gets as a result, because it's even harder to follow everything. If everyone's coin joining and doing coin joins with each other, it's like it's going to be impossible for these companies to even, like, I think it might have been Odell that said this, but it's like if chain analysis companies still have a business model in 5 years, we failed.
Yeah.
Like we should make it to where there is nothing they can do.
They have no,
so
if we eliminate all the points of reference within the time chain, they can't like relate something to another thing, because they don't have an initial like thing to go by.
yeah, if everyone is immediately going straight into CoinJoin from exchanges, like what are they going to do? They can't. So that's what's really exciting about Sparrow, um, bringing equal output CoinJoin through Whirlpool to an entirely new set of users that didn't have access before. Because the recommendation was, well, just buy like a Pixel, like buy an Android phone. That is your dedicated like mixing tool of choice. Because we haven't talked about some of the other CoinJoin implementations. So
Yeah, there's Wasabi and Join Market, right?
yeah, yep, and so Join Market, I believe, was actually they might have been like first to market. It's more of a maker and taker approach. So and I haven't actually used it. It's much less user friendly though, just from some of the tutorials and stuff that I've kind of watched. It's more command line driven. There's something called Join in Box that makes it a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit more of a manual process, and you can't continually remix for free, which is the kind of the game changer within how Samurai team has set up Whirlpool. So once you've gone into a mix, let's just say that you decided to go into the 100,000 sat pool, and you've sent it like 500,000, a little over 500,000 sats. There are some fees and stuff, but you will basically get in your post-mix wallet, you will get 100,000 sat UTXOs. If you don't spend out of those, if you don't spend anything out of the post-mix wallet there, then you will actually be able to continually add those UTXOs into new Samurai Wallet remixes. And it doesn't cost anything extra because I was talking earlier about how it's a 5-person, sort of like a 5 UTXO coin join of equal outputs. And all of the transaction fees for all 5 participants are paid by 2 of the 5. So the way that the protocol works, there are for every remix or for every mix within Samurai Wallet, there have to be 2 new UTXOs that have never or 2 UTXOs that are like not mixing, not in post mix, but they just get added. They're basically brand new participants.
Yeah.
UTXOs, because once you spend a UTXO, it actually will go away and sort of create a new one if there's any change or whatever.
Yeah.
So that UTXO has to have never been in Whirlpool before. So you have 2 new UTXOs coming in, and then 3 remixers, and those 3 remixers are free riders because the 2 that come in pay for all 5 of the minor fees.
Got it.
Does the what third, this does is
sorry, do the 3 that are already like mixed that are just staying in there, what's the benefit of those for those people of keeping theirs in? Is it just to be helpful because that's how Samurai works, and you need users who've mixed some UTXOs to keep them so they can be remixed?
So the reason why you would leave them in there is because it increases your anonymity set. So if you're talking about wanting to achieve maximum privacy, that is going to benefit every single person that uses Whirlpool. It's going to benefit yourself. So there's the way that they have it set up, I think is just brilliant around the incentive models. So you basically just leave, and if you only have Samurai Wallet, you don't have a dojo backing, then they will only mix when you actually have the Whirlpool client open within Samurai Wallet on your phone. And so because in order to be sent in, you have to basically sign you have to sign the transactions for sending a UTXO back into a mix, because all a mix it's a 5-person coin join transaction, right? So if you're going to be continually signing transactions, you have to have your phone open online. If you do have a Ronin Dojo, though, and this is why Samurai Wallet, almost all Samurai Wallet users, once they've been using it for a while and using CoinJoin, they get their own node. is that there's a tool called it's like uh, Whirlpool CLI, and it's just built into Ronin Dojo. And what this does is you pair it to your Samurai Wallet phone, and then what it will allow you to do is actually continually remix 24/7, even when your phone's offline, because there's just the minimum required information that's actually held on the Ronin Dojo node just to sign those transactions, the remix transactions. So that allows you to 24, like, so even though my phone's offline or I don't have an internet connection or something, um, all of the UTXOs that I have yet to spend any amount, because once you spend any amount, like if you spend 10,000 sats from one of those 100,000 sat UTXOs, you know, that's going to, because the way that Bitcoin transactions work, that entire UTXO is spent and basically comes out of the pool to be mixed. And you'll basically have, you'll send 10,000 sats to maybe your friend or whatever, and then 90,000 sats come back to a change address. And so that, because it's no longer part of the equal outputs, the 100,000 sat or million sat, it can no longer be mixed. It still stays within Samurai Wallet. It looks like it's in your post mix wallet, but it cannot be remixed any further. So once you spend a UTXO from the post mix tool, it will essentially take it out of the free remixes.
Got it. But you can
makes
mix that UTXO again if you want to, right? As a new one.
So you could do that. There's really not, there isn't a need to directly do that because you've still broken that link. And so yeah, someone knows that you got 90,000 sats back and change, but they don't know that it's you. It's just some random person.
Oh, got it. Okay.
If you were so eventually though, maybe you've made a few spends and you've made a few of those spends to like different businesses, and they might be able to, it just depends on, again, your threat model, like how serious you want to take it. But you can you could send it to Samurai Wallet deposit, Samurai, or I guess Sparrow as well, just the deposit wallet. That's where you start all of your mixes from, and you can run through and remix them again. Okay. The only coins you can't, so part of the Whirlpool implementation, there's it's actually, they follow something called zero link. But basically, if you were going to say, let's just say you're going to mix 500,000 sats, you have to pay some fees, and maybe within all the UTXOs you had 550,000. There were 30,000 in fees. You're actually going to have, because you need to have equal outputs, you're going to have 20,000 sats in what they call toxic change, and that goes into it's kind of like hidden from you to where you can't accidentally spend it. And if you ever mix that with that UTXO is absolutely still tied to your identity. So you're not going to add that through. You do not want to ever combine that with any of the UTXOs that you ran through CoinJoin, or it's going to actually undo a lot of the privacy that you've done. This is the reason why Wasabi is actually known for bad for undoing a lot of the people have run their coins through Wasabi, but they don't have this concept of these different wallets. So like Samurai Wallets, once you have run something through CoinJoin, it goes into your Postmix wallet, and you can't generate receive addresses, for example, to your Postmix wallet. The only way you can get funds in there is through, and this is all just done through UX. Technically, you could find the derivation path stuff and you could get coins in there, but the point is they make it so that you cannot take a UTXO that has been essentially doxed, your change output that didn't end up running through Whirlpool, and mixing it with a UTXO that you have. So they're kind of doing some of that sort of CoinJoin for you. So it feels like there's multiple wallets within one, if that makes sense. You have just your normal Samurai wallet, and then you have your Postmix wallet. And so your Postmix wallet is where you do all of your private spending from. Your sort of normal one, which is the one that lands on, we call that the deposit, because that's where you deposit your funds before you run them through CoinJoin. Um, so there's again, like I highly recommend trying out Sparrow because I think you're an iPhone guy. Is that right?
I am, yeah. So
Yeah.
I have an Android phone as well, and that's what I was going to ask because I know you said that
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah. So I know you said you're running like you're running Dojo for privacy, which presumably means you're using Samurai Wallet on an Android phone to like go with that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm running. I used Calyx for a few months, and
Mm-hmm.
then I've actually been using Graphene for almost a month. And so yeah, kind of going down. It's funny. There's just so much stuff in this space that's like caused me to look at other areas, like not even at all really related to Bitcoin, but just more like digital privacy or security. Like my laptop, my MacBook screen shattered like a week ago. I think I posted about it on Twitter. And that was my excuse for ordering a Linux laptop and going, I'll be on Pop OS System 76 laptop and an Android phone running Graphene. It's like
You're going full
getting to the
FOSS
point where,
private.
yeah, it's like very, very down the rabbit hole, much more than I was anticipating. Like, all started from a podcast from a value investor on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, about the thing is like you get yeah, you like one thing leads to another and then suddenly like you're overhauling like 20 years of tech and whatever else you're used to, like going from Windows to Linux to like yeah, and then getting off. I've switched from iPhone to Android to iPhone back to Android and back to iPhone again, and now I just run both.
That that one's hard. Yeah, that actually seems to be a good solution for a lot of people is, for just kind of your day-to-day use and socials, you just use an iPhone. And then for stuff that like, if you're going to be running Bitcoin wallets and stuff, Flash, Graphene, I think I'm becoming more and more a proponent of Graphene by the day, just with how thorough they are and not just the price. It's like most people talk about graphene that it's like much more secure than like anything else out there. But like but Calyx is still pretty good privacy wise. But um, I, I'm finding that that's not exactly true, and that graphene is also significantly more private. Just the team behind the that project is extremely thorough on the app hardening and OS hardening levels that I think is I'm kind of becoming more a proponent of graphene sort of by the day.
Okay.
Even though Calyx worked, I mean it worked really well. I didn't actually have any sort of issues. I had some app compatibility issues, but that's more just the fact that they use micro G. Um, anyways, we don't need to go into that.
Yeah, I mean, all I heard was like Calyx is a good mix between like it's user friendly, not as like, I guess, extreme as Graphene OS, but still offers decent privacy.
It definitely does remove a lot of the just like the Google trackers and stuff that are built in. So it's kind of like here's like an analogy that I would sort of draw. It's still much better for a user to acquire a ledger and use ledger software as long as it means that they're holding their own keys.
Mm-hmm.
And then they could eventually run to their own node and a cold card. But I've kind of got to the point now where if someone's new into the space and they want to look at hardware wallets, I don't know why. Like I've just started just going straight to the cold card and connecting them to my node, kind of being an Uncle Jim. I think that's the term used to where you're like, not everyone's going to run their own node. But if, family member, for example, is going to be, or a friend, they're going to be connecting to some sort of a Bitcoin node for their wallet software, it might as well be mine instead of instead of some random person's.
Yeah.
But so I think that's kind of where I'm landing on the Calyx and graphene thing is I think everyone will eventually get to the point where they'll probably want to just run graphene. And so you might as well just bite the bullet. And there are a couple things like, so Micro G is they're kind of, it's not even just theirs, but Micro G is a project that basically brings Google Play service functionality for apps that rely on it to implementations of Android that don't have Google Play services.
Okay. So you can still like use Google Maps or something.
Yeah, exactly. But the way that they do it is it's like an open source. It's not it's an open source re-implementation. So it's not done exactly the way that Google did it. And so with that, there are compatibility issues. So I had some apps that, most of the Bitcoin apps worked fine, but I had some apps that just didn't work very well on Micro G and were kind of buggy. So the thing that's kind of relatively newer development from Graphene is that you can install a sandboxed version of Google Play Services, which essentially is Google Play Services, but has zero additional has zero special privileges in the sense that you're not going to be giving it, even though you're running actual Google services, unless you start giving it additional permissions, which you don't need to, you're not going to be giving up any additional data to Google that you would over something like Micro G. And you have the additional benefit of you're actually using Google's implementation, which is going to be much more secure than this kind of open source re-implementation where they kind of cut some corners and stuff. It's just a little bit more of a pain to install. Like Micro G comes standard on Calyx and is already there, and things kind of work. So I've been kind of thinking about actually that might even be like an opportunity that I may seek out in the future is how to get people kind of onboarded onto Graphene, because it's really just people are going to need some hand holding in the beginning. I think eventually they'll be able to have an option where you can pretty easily just like one click install the Google Play services. But right now it's more of a manual process. So it's really at this point, once you have everything set up on Graphene, I think that it runs and is absolutely usable for a daily driver. And you also get essentially the maximum security and privacy that you can get on a mobile operating system. It just is going to take, a few hours of setup. And if you don't know what you're doing or what you're looking for, it may be, or you're not technically inclined, it's definitely going to be a little more of a challenge. But even installing it is actually easier than installing Calyx.
Oh,
they have a web installer that just does absolutely everything for you. Calyx, you actually I know I've seen multiple people talk about how they literally stopped because they couldn't figure out all the terminal stuff. Graphene has a literal web installer that you plug in to your computer, and it literally can just install everything, even do like signature verification of software and all that stuff, sort of automatically through their little web app.
Nice. I mean, that's definitely on my list. Like running, I'm gonna try to run a Linux in VirtualBox, VMware VirtualBox, or whatever it's called, just so I can like run it within without like having to dual boot or get rid of Windows just yet, and then just play around with that. And I think Graphene or Calyx, after hearing you talk about Graphene, I probably just try Graphene. But like these things are far down the line in terms of like I want to run my own node and like get my Bitcoin privacy up to speed first, and then these other things will come later. There's just so much. There's so much.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it's just constant drinking from the fire hose every day.
Yeah. But man, this was really helpful. Like I feel a lot more confident in terms of getting started with the nodes. And I think the next step is really like you've shared a lot of the sort of basics. So I feel like I have a basic understanding. I think I just need to get doing it now and actually playing around with it, and then I'll probably have some more questions or just some more things I don't understand or things I'll discover and I'll be curious about, and then maybe we can do this again.
Yeah, and I think like I know you saw that thread that I posted the other day on how to spend your $850 or whatever.
Yeah, that was great.
The point on that was like to get people people that want to learn, so very much, people that are in your position, give them things to actually look into and do their own research on, not necessarily because there were some people in there that were like, hey, can you walk me through how to do all this stuff or something like that. I was like, no, you gotta at some, like, those people don't really care that much. But I really wanted to just inspire people to, um, people that want to learn, give them some areas to look into.
Yeah.
So like, for example, if you look into, like, just if you want to learn, like, for anyone listening that wants to learn a lot about like on-chain, and this isn't getting into Lightning at all. Lightning is a very different beast, but if you want to look into on-chain privacy, which you should, because if you're transacting on chain, that chain is forever. Everything, you can't undo anything that's on there. So you should at least learn about, how does it work? What happens when you don't use privacy best practices? So good places to learn from that. Bitcoiner.guide has an entire section on how to, like, best practices for using Bitcoin privately, but also those, and we'll see if I'll help you find those links. But there's an article from Samurai Wallet team on anonymity sets,
Yeah.
and so why, just learning about that, and how, like I was talking about, how continually going through Whirlpool and being a part of additional free remixes, how it adds to your anonymity set. What does that mean? Looking into that. And then also going through that 4-part sort of series on, like, how to chain analysis yourself.
Yeah.
Chain analyze
I
yourself.
found the link for that, so I've noted it down as well.
Yeah, going through those and just learn about how to use Bitcoin privately, or like what happens if you don't. I think is a very good starting point. And then at that point, you'll have your own sort of level of conviction on what to do from there, what to go from there. So
Yeah, awesome. No, I thought your your tweet thread was really good, and it's like, these days with the internet and Google, if anyone who wants to, you've given them the names of stuff, like, action, do this. This is the name of a thing. Like, all they need to do is then, like, Google, even if they don't know what, like, a cold card KISB guide bundle. I think, like, someone can figure out that they just need to go to the cold card website and look at the shop and find the KISB bundle and buy it, etc. Right.
Or and even just like you were saying, how your sort of next steps is to go play around with this stuff, right? Like, I mean, there's going to be a cost to playing around with some of the stuff, like even running through Whirlpool. There's fees and stuff like that. But go, like, set up Sparrow, throw some. I mean, it can be anything. It could be KYC sats. It doesn't really matter. Just throw some Bitcoin in the deposit wallet, run it through CoinJoin. Sparrow has an entire guide on his website. Craig has on his website for Sparrow on how to mix with Sparrow, and it even explains, like, why CoinJoin, kind of like pretty short little blurb there. And then also, like, talking about the post mix wallet, like, why do we separate the post mix wallet after we've run coins through CoinJoin? UTXO management, like coin controller labeling, that kind of stuff is also, like, on his sites. But I would say for you, or for anyone listening, just to, if you've never done it or never used it, just go and use it, and you will learn a lot. Just by doing. That's how I've always learned the best, is from just playing around with stuff. Even though you're going to have to pay some fees, like some on-chain fees, just because you're moving around. So maybe wait till the weekend when on-chain fees go down to 1 sat per byte or something.
Yeah, always
and
good to wait for the mempool to be empty, right?
Yeah.
I remember that from Odell saying that, like, it's a good time to do, like, UTXO cleanup, but I didn't really know what that meant, but now I kind of do.
Yeah, it's like, if
UTXO
you want to
management.
consolidate. Yeah, like, this is something that I even kind of, like, more recently was learning about. But, like, if you have, let's just say you have a single UTXO that is, because it's like a change address or something, or a change UTXO, you only have like 1,000 sats or something. Eventually when fees go up, you're not even going to be able to move those sats, because the fee might literally be like 100 sats or something, or 500 sats just to move it. So when the fees go down low like that, you can even take your kind of call them like dust UTXOs, where it's just like very, very, very tiny amounts, and you can consolidate them. So maybe you'd have one big Coinbase UTXO. It's fine to consolidate that into one because they already know that you own all of those.
Yeah.
But doing that type of thing, cleaning up and consolidating them, that's one thing that I talk about. Or just opening and closing lightning channels. Doing so Whirlpool, because when your coins are going into a mix, you are paying for you and another person, or you and another ETF, you're paying for the rest, the other three of that 5-person coin join in on-chain fees.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely makes a big difference to run through Whirlpool when fees are lower. So, if you want to wait till the weekend, you can probably just do it for cheaper. Would be a little tip that I would recommend. Don't do it in like a high fee environment.
Sundays are usually the best for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sundays are usually, I mean, we've had it to where it was so low, like even throughout the entire week, you kind of just do it whenever. But since it's gone up,
price has gone up,
or whatever in the last, it's a little bit more active. I saw Catan, he was making the claim that miners were spamming the network again. That's kind of what everyone is thinking, like that. A lot of the Chinese miners that went offline, they were potentially spamming the network, and he was saying, he's like, oh, they're spamming him again. He's the guy that's 1 sat per byte for life. Never pay more than that.
I guess if you're willing to wait however long, you can, right?
Right. Yep.
Amazing.
So.
Yeah, I mean, for those listening as well, there is I don't know if you follow it. There is a mempool alert bot on Twitter which tells you when the mempool clears, I think. So it just tweets whenever the mempool's cleared. Yeah,
there are different ones. The one that I follow is I feel like not even that helpful anymore, because it sends out tweets every time the mempool's under 10 sats per byte, because that used to be really helpful for a while.
Because that was considered really cheap.
That was cheap, yeah, but then it's just like a hard-coded bot. It's not like adapting or anything like that. So it's, like all the time it's going off in my feed. I'm like, I should probably find a different one. But I think there are ones that show either when the pool clears or when you reach 1 sat per byte. I think if you follow, if you're interested in some of the Whirlpool stuff, there's there are Telegram groups for that. And I think even in the Samurai Whirlpool Telegram group, I think there's a bot that even posts in there every time it hits sats, fees hits 1 sat per byte, basically saying, hey, this is now a really good time to run. So, you can keep stacking to your, let's say Sparrow, for example. So that's probably what you'll be using. Stack to your Sparrow, that hot wallet. And you can, one thing that's kind of cool about Sparrow is you can actually toggle off the connection even to your own node. So there is no additional connection. You basically only need to connect if you need to send a transaction or refresh your UTX, refresh your transactions or something like that. But anyways, stack to it, and whenever you withdraw from your exchange, buy from BISC or whatever, send it there. You don't need to run it through CoinJoin though until fees are lower, if you're not going to be doing any additional spending. So you can kind of stack to the deposit wallet, wait until fees go low, and then run through and do a bunch of coin joins.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I have everything. I've got everything except for the Samsung SSD for the Running Dojo. So as soon as I get that, I might even be able to build. I've got family over this weekend, so it's not going to be this weekend. It's going to be the next one. But yeah, I will build both nodes. I will play around, and then I will report back, and maybe we can do this again if you'd like. Because I'm sure I'll have some more questions, perhaps some more advanced questions once I've actually done some of this myself. And there's a few things I'd love to get into Lightning with you, although I know you said that you're not super expert in Lightning, but compared to me, you will be. So And also I wanted to talk about like connecting a hardware wallet, but this is all stuff I'll try out as well, and then we can talk about it perhaps next time.
Yeah, and again, I definitely recommend checking for whatever you're playing around with. So let's just say you're setting up your own dojo or your Raspberry Blitz. Like there are individual Telegram groups for all of those, and they're all pretty dang active.
Yeah, I'm in the
so
Samurai
I
wallet
also
and the Ronin Dojo one, so I just need to. Oh, and I'm in the Raspberry Blitz one, so I'll also use those as resources and ask around and for help.
Yeah, Sparrow. Ever since Sparrow added Whirlpool, Sparrow has one now. That one's pretty small, but it's active, and Craig's in there all the time. The main developer there to help users out and stuff. It's pretty cool. So as you're going through and trying out those different things, those groups can be great resources as well. And then just like if you're working with Sparrow, like they have like sparrowswallet.com, they have documents on how to do certain things, how to export to how to export your XPub from your cold card into Sparrow, that kind of a thing.
Okay, awesome.
And then feel free to reach out to me too, just if you have any questions. But happy to do this again. This is fun.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. Thanks for your time. I'll just shout out your handle here as well, which is on Twitter. You're at Satrinity402. So just anyone who listens to this, go follow Satrinity. And yeah, man, thanks very much. You've reached the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'd also like to say thank you once again to Satrinity402. Go give him a follow on Twitter. That's his handle, at Satrinity402. And I am at BTC Gandalf on Twitter. If you enjoyed this, if you got some value from this information, you can head over to my Twitter account, and if you'd like to tip me or support my work, there are some links there to, I have a Lightning address, etc., etc. So if you do that, much appreciated. If you don't, I hope that you at least found this helpful, and I thank you once again for listening. See you next time.